This is Thriving in Business and Life, and I'm Will Wilkinson.
And I'm Christopher Harding, and today we have a special guest with us, Fred Mosler. And for any of you who know the business Zappos, you'll recognize that name. But just to give you a little bit of a background, Fred is a business executive. He's listed in Wikipedia actually as a fashion guru, which
I've never met a fashion guru before.
Yeah,
amazing.
And a philanthropist as well. He'll share some of the amazing projects they're doing in Las Vegas. And he's best known as a former high-ranking executive at the online shoe retailer Zappos, which was listed as being one of the best companies to work for in the U.S. and maybe even in the world, for that matter. And he played a real significant role in that company's growth. And, Will, I know you met Fred ahead of time.
Yeah, really interesting. And it says a lot about his character, and I think why we want him on the show, besides just his business success. He really connected with a young lad who lives next door. He's my neighbor's son. Percy's 19 now. And they developed a connection through an event Percy attended where Tony Hsieh was at, the founder of Zappos. And he met Fred through Tony. And then I helped Percy with the email connections back and forth. And I just noticed that Fred was a real guy. I mean, he was really connecting with this young man. And as it's turned out, has provided quite a bit of inspiration for him.
That's phenomenal. Well, without further ado, let's bring Fred on board. Fred, I know you had a real hand, along with others, in helping to shape the culture at Zappos. And as you know, in our book, we talk a lot about creating a thriving culture. So what was it that you and others did to create that culture?
The best thing, or the biggest thing that we did at Zappos was to allow the employees the freedom to create the culture. So, we really, there was very little in terms of many of the things that are signatures of the culture today that we came up with. But, we tried to create an environment that allowed the employees to express their creativity.
I'm just curious with how they took to that. I mean, I'm sure it was a surprise to a lot of the new employees. Were some kind of not able to adapt to that, or how did that work out?
Tony and I would always talk to every incoming class of employees at Zappos, and the one thing that we let them know was that it wasn't our culture, it was their culture. And they were responsible for, for improving the culture and moving it forward and investing in the culture. And we expected them to bring new ideas and ways to make the culture better than it was on the day they joined the company.
Let me ask you a question if I could. One of the things we've always been proponents of is what we call leveraging the genius of inclusion. And sounds like that's very much at the heart of what you were doing, really encouraging people to bring their best ideas forward and creating an environment where that was safe and rewarded.
Exactly. Tony had a great quote. He always said about himself as a CEO that he never wanted to be the tallest plants in the greenhouse, but he wanted to help create a greenhouse where all the plants could thrive.
That's phenomenal.
Well, Fred, you and I met when you were here in Oregon a little while ago. You're a grad of SOU, and you gave a presentation there. And one of the things you said that really stuck with me, and I'd love you to share it with our listeners, is Zappos Policy with new hires. And, I'll let you tell the details, but the very generous treatment, the financial reward if they wanted to leave. I think it'd be fascinating for listeners to hear about that.
Sure. Every person hired into Zappos, whether you're going into the finance team or the tech team or the merchandising team, every single employee has to first, before they take their position, spend 4 weeks in our customer loyalty team training, and our customer loyalty team is the name that for the call center, and so they need to go through four weeks of training on the front lines, speaking directly with the customers, because obviously we believe that our customer loyalty team is is the most valuable part of the company, because they are right there connecting with the customers. Mm-hmm. And at Zappos, customer service isn't a department; it's the entire company.
Wow.
That's perfect.
What a great frame.
Yeah. And so we actually offer we pay people to quit. This the 4-week training is pretty intense, and as I said, everyone must go through it in the end of the 4 weeks. And I think it might be up to about $5,000 now. We make an offer to all of the employees that if they've decided after that training that Zappos isn't right for them, then we're happy to pay them that $5,000 and they can pursue a different passion.
That's just amazing. And of course, even more remarkable is, as you said, very few people took you up on that.
Yeah, very, very few. It's in the single digits of percentages, I think, that took us up. And I guess the other thing that happens when people pass on that offer is that now they're more committed and invested than ever to their journey at Zappos.
Well, in a way, they've invested $5,000 into their own future.
Absolutely.
They got skin in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I had heard about Zappos, and you can tell me whether this is myth or reality, but that there was a real focus on encouraging entrepreneurship with the various people who worked at Zappos, that there was a spirit of helping you prepare to grow your own dream. Is that true?
Yeah, we've through the history of Zappos, we've always really supported the entrepreneurial journey of the employees, and we had a program that we called Z-Frogs, where employees could come together with different ideas they had about businesses that Zappos should potentially enter, or ideas, that there should be a Zappos donut shop, for example, and they'd bring a business plan and give their pitch, and we'd review it and then decide whether or not to invest in it. It was a little bit of I guess, kind of a Shark Tank might be the best comparison. And that was several years ago. Zappos is now, they changed their organizational structure to self-managing organizational structure, and they've adopted kind of an operating system for that called Holacracy. And basically under Holacracy, everyone is empowered to kind of pursue the passions that and their entrepreneurial spirit in the purpose of the company. And so now you don't necessarily even need to go pitch a Shark Tank board, but if you have a great idea and it serves the purpose of the company, then and it doesn't harm anything or move the company backward, you're free to pursue it.
Wow, that's phenomenal. That seems like that would have had to been an evolution to get people's minds wrapped around that, because a lot of times when we look at, that's empowerment in a really wonderful way. I know a lot of times when we've worked with organizations, empowerment doesn't necessarily have those real clear bumper guards or guidelines that you described. It has to move the company forward, and it can't move the company backward. And those considerations are of course key.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, part of the whole philosophy of self-organization is the fulfillment of that purpose. And, I pulled that out of some of the writings in your book as well, that in Thriving. And the other thing that I thought was very similar, you talked about accountabilities. Mm-hmm. And people need to have accountabilities, and then people need to be responsible for those accountabilities. So I thought those two were very similar concepts.
Yeah, that's something we've noticed too in organizations that we work with, that when people understand that responsibility is both immediate and personal, it's also simultaneous and group oriented. So I'm totally responsible for what I do and the ripple effect that has and the results it creates. but I'm also responsible, for the people I impact, and we have a group responsibility that we take on together.
Exactly. That's it.
Well, Fred, I'd like to kind of get into your own entrepreneurship, because I know I think it was 2016 you moved on from Zappos, and say a little bit about what your edge was there. Like, what were you moving forward into, and what's happened since?
Yeah. So I've, throughout the years at Zappos, dabbled in things on the side. I bought into a little pizza franchise here in Las Vegas in 2009, and I wanted to kind of learn the food and beverage business. And in 2010, we started a restaurant based on some of that knowledge called Nacho Daddy here. It featured gourmet nachos and a whimsical name, but high quality product and great service. And that kind of throughout the years has now grown into 4 locations here in Las Vegas and about 200 employees. So it went from kind of a hobby to an actual company, a real business, and that continues to grow and develop. And then I got involved with Tony in the Downtown Project. And so Downtown Project is a group of private investors and focused on the revitalization, investing in the revitalization of downtown Las Vegas. And so downtown Las Vegas is, if you haven't been here, kind of the area that's east of Fremont Street or east of Las Vegas Boulevard on Fremont Street, kind of the old Las Vegas. And, Las Vegas didn't really have an urban core. And there were a few bars and restaurants down there that we started to spend some time in. And Zappos were all originally from San Francisco, and it felt a lot like San Francisco. It was very, it felt like that had that urban feeling that we missed, and so I guess throughout a year or two, we decided to actually move our headquarters from the suburbs for Zappos into downtown Las Vegas, and then make a private investment in the area surrounding the office. And in that investment, we invested about $200 million into kind of the acquisition development of real estate. Put $50 million into arts and education, and that's anywhere from starting a school to a music festival, a monthly arts festival. We put $50 million into investing in small businesses. So kind of the people that have the idea for the donut shop or the restaurant or, a variety of other things. There's a great toy store downtown. And so these entrepreneurs that have these ideas, making those initial small investments and then helping to provide them some support in growing those businesses. And then $50 million into technology. So an investment fund that based on tech companies that would be located here in Las Vegas and try and help develop the tech scene here in downtown Las Vegas.
Well, that's amazing.
That is amazing. As you were talking about that and support of entrepreneurial endeavors and so on, I wanted to flash back because you intrigued me with your own exploration into the food and beverage business and how you went about doing that. When you first got into that and bought the pizza shop and so on, how did that go? Were there lessons learned? Was it an easy go?
Well, yeah, and Fred, I was there at SOU when you actually mentioned this, if you recall, and I thought it was really outstanding how you were pretty humble about the shift from big Zappos to little pizza store and the special challenges that you encountered. So I think our listeners would really enjoy hearing about that.
Sure, it was definitely humbling. We I guess so. 2009 at Zappos, I think we just had broken $1 billion in gross merchandise sales, and we've made for the first time Fortune's list of best companies to work for. No. And I think at the time we had close between 4,000 and 5,000 employees at Zappos. So originally kind of grown that from a small 2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco with a couple of us to, to several thousand employees. And so I thought, well, this, pizza place that has 10 employees and, well under $1 million in sales, this is going to be a cinch. And turns out it wasn't. It was very difficult to run and very humbling for me. And I think after a couple of years of the pizza business, we eventually had to close it.
What did you identify there, that you really learned lessons from that have helped you moving forward?
I think running a small business that size is very difficult if you're not the owner operator.
Right.
There just isn't enough revenue or scale to support someone running that business for you. And I think that type of business at that size is ideal for someone that can own it and run it on a daily basis. And I guess as large a company was at Zappos, we had lots of support and lots of wonderful people every day helping us move the business forward. And it was just it was something that I would have needed to be much more involved with on a daily basis to help support its success.
Now, in spite of all of that, you went ahead and got re-involved in food and beverage, this time successfully. So what's the difference?
I kind of have a philosophy in life that it's things such as the business closing and us not figuring out. I don't look at those things as failures. I look at those things as investments in education.
Yeah.
And so, while the business wasn't successful, I learned a lot personally, and I didn't want those learnings to go to waste. And so we decided to open this other restaurant, our own concept that would be more scalable and apply a lot of the things that we learned on the closing of the previous business to the new business. And, we've taken a lot of lumps along the way in that business too, but, it's to a size now and nationally recognized and growing and doing well. But, I'm also, just hate to give up on anything as well. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm wired.
Usually a little of both, we found. Well, from looking at our book, you'd recognize that one of our themes, actually it's in the first chapter, we call it Owning Your Story. And it's really about, differentiating between the facts of the situation and the story you tell about it. So, you mentioned your philosophy. I'd love to hear a little more about the story, of Fred's life. Like, what's the story you're making up? You're a successful businessman. You've worked in very big ventures and also small ones. Guide our listeners a little bit with, what is the story you make up? You get up every morning and you get about your day. What does that look like?
Well, I think in your book, you said that you carry your parents' dreams with you. Mm-hmm. And I think my father always told me, he said, in life, be a builder, not a wrecker. Mm. And he told me that from very early when I was very young and reinforced it throughout my life. And so I've always kind of thought about my life as trying to help create opportunities for others, to try and build things. Mm. And that's where I have the most enjoyment, and that's what I'm passionate about, and where I enjoy spending my time. I really love business. I got my degree in business. I've loved business since I was 5 years old. I would listen and read the business section, and when my friends were reading comic books, and that probably sounds really nerdy, but that's how it was. And so I've always been really intrigued by business, and I love to learn different industries. We're starting a shoe company. We've got one involved in the music festival. We've got a film company. We've got the restaurants, and but and there are things that apply that you can learn in one of the businesses, one of the industries that apply to all of the others. And I love expanding my knowledge base and trying to connect the dots in that journey.
Well, someone else who's busy with a lot of business activities is Elon Musk, and I've just learned that, of all the things he does, one of his main passions is the whole area of artificial intelligence. Is there one thing that kind of rises out of all that you do, Fred, that you would say is most important to you?
Yeah, I guess, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I've read many articles now recently about how isolated people feel, and with technology and the Facebook effect, and all the screen time that people are actually less, they're more disassociated now than they've ever been before. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, and it was true at Zappos, and it was why I enjoyed Nordstrom and all of and why I enjoy these other businesses. I guess for me, the most, what I like to focus on is an authentic connection. Mm-hmm. So I like to be on the front lines. I like to affect people's day, affect their viewpoint, get to know them, create a personal relationship with them, with these companies that I'm involved with, and deliver an experience that hopefully makes their life more positive. And I think that's, what I'm focused on.
It sounds like that, as you talk about that, one of the things we describe in the book also, as is infusing your values into everything you do. And it sounds like that's a real important value for you, and that it got infused not only in terms of how Zappos employees interact with each other and the way they participate together, but how the customer is involved as part of that connection and part of that relationship.
Exactly. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's. I think it's really interesting, and I'm curious. What was the average age, do you think, of your employee at Zappos, and do you feel that they had authentic connections in that culture?
Oh, absolutely. They had very authentic connections in the culture. The culture was focused on creating a personal, emotional connection with customers and building team and family spirit within the company. And we invested a lot of time into both those pursuits. It was, I think it was one of the more connected companies that I've ever come across, and really personally authentic companies.
Well, I wanted to commend you, Fred, because you and I met because of your connection with a young lad. He's my neighbor's son, Percy. He's 19 now. And you met him through a connection with Tony. And, Percy was so touched by the way you connected with him and your generosity with your time. And I just wanted to thank you for that, because that's really walking your talk of what you just mentioned, the connecting. And I think it's missing a lot of the time. We could call it mentorship, or, just being a friend, an experienced friend with a young person. And thanks for that. And I'm expecting that's probably what you do with others as well.
Absolutely. It's important, right? It's very important to invest that time in those relationships.
A lot of the connectivity you have with customers, obviously, and maybe even within the company, is done virtually. And so you were talking about, there's a question as to whether screen time itself is the cause of disassociation and lack of connection. And I'm wondering, do you think that it has to be that way? Is there a way that screen time could lead to authentic connection?
Yeah, I think, I think that it's people need time with other people. People need time to connect. And, I think there's a great example of a tech company called meetup.com that tries to bring different groups of people together to share experiences and meet face to face. And I think that's a great way, for technology to connect one another. I think even Facebook and the groups and connecting with old friends, can create some of that But it's important that I guess we always remember that, it's that personal connection with other humans that we can't forget about and is very important for all of us.
Well, as we're wrapping up here, first of all, I want to thank you for your time, but also if you had final words to share, we've got a fairly broad audience, Brazil, China, England, the US, Canada, and so on. What is it that you'd share with people that are words of wisdom that you would suggest maybe from your life lessons?
Yeah, I guess I think spent my life in entrepreneurial pursuits, and the lesson that I'd share is that there's never a right time to pursue entrepreneurship. The right time is now, and what's great about the world today and the world of business is that it's easier than ever to start a business. There's never been such a platform or so many platforms to kind of get your feet wet and get started. And so embrace that and don't wait for tomorrow. Get doing today.
Well, you're reminding me of something apparently Zig Ziglar said. He said, you don't have to be a genius to start, but you have to start to become a genius.
That's right. That's great.
Well, yeah, great comment.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time with us today, Fred. This has been really illuminating.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate you allowing me to participate, and I enjoyed the book.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Fred.
All right.
So this is Thriving in Business and Life, and you can reach us with comments and your own suggestions and stories at thrivinginbusinessandlife@gmail.com. I'm Christopher Harding.
And I'm Will Wilkinson. Hope you enjoyed the show today with entrepreneur Fred Mosler. And by the way, if you have any suggestions for guests you'd like us to interview, just let us know via email.